Say, man, y'all looking to build some muscle, man? That's good, man. That's real good. Y'all done come to the right place then. Alright guys, it's time for part 2, so let's knock this out. First question. Hey Jason, huge fan here. What RPE do you recommend for LISS, which means low intensity steady state cardio? Is 3 to 4 okay, or should it be harder? Also, is it necessary to reach RPE 10 to justify decreasing the weight 10% on your novice program? Thanks. A couple different questions there. Alright, on the LISS question, I wouldn't even put RPE. I don't even know how we would gauge RPE for LISS cardio. Who cares? Throw it out. If you can't do it for at least an hour straight or 45 minutes straight without being completely exhausted, it's not LISS cardio. Just because it's LISS for someone else doesn't mean it's LISS for you. That's too high intensity. Back it down. Real simple. As far as the RPE 10 on my novice program, probably not. If you're hitting even a 9.5, if you're hitting grinders on that 4th and 5th rep, and you're grinding them out and seeing some form degradation, which could be an RPE 9 to 9.5 for some people, then yeah, it's time to reset. Any form breakdown or grinders, serious grinders on a rep, you can go ahead and reset on the program and rebuild from. Doesn't need to be a true failure or a true max effort attempt. It will still keep you in the same strength range if you go ahead and decrease at that point. You'll be right back where you were in no time. All right, next question. Can you maintain your numbers on the big 3 with 4 weeks away from the gym? Maybe just doing what you've mentioned in the past, using bodyweight exercises during this period. Should you expect numbers to go down? Cheers. Yeah, your lifts are going to go down. Absolutely going to go down in 4 weeks. You shouldn't expect otherwise. Now, if you're doing bodyweight exercises and you're getting your girlfriend to squat on your back and you're doing weighted push-ups or dips and pull-ups and all those things, will that help maintain it a lot better during those 4 weeks? Absolutely. But should you expect to maintain 100% of your strength on some technique-oriented exercises like the bench press or the squat without doing them at all, or something extremely close in variation? No, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to maintain 100%. Now, in some cases, depending on your strength level, you might, but if you're relatively strong, you're probably not going to keep all those motor learning specifically for those exercises down. So they're probably going to go down a little bit. But as I said on the other question about the downtime, if you're in a situation where you can't get in a gym because you're out on a tropical island for 4 weeks, then do what you got to do. There's nothing else you can do about it, so just do the exercises that you can do with the body weight to hold on to as much muscle mass as you can. And at least if you don't lose any muscle mass and you unlearn the motor patterns, you can relearn the motor patterns relatively quickly. So you won't lose very much, and you'll probably be back where you were within a very, very short period of time, possibly as soon as a week or 2. So pretty straightforward there. All right, next question. Is it possible to have asymmetric body fat distribution? My understanding is that genetics determine how you store fat, e.g. people with the same body fat percentage and lean body mass can have different appearances. But I've also observed differences in definition, triceps, biceps, pecs, moobs, even though there isn't a significant size or performance difference during exercise. Yeah, absolutely, and that's genetic also. And I would say, if anything, having a slight asymmetric amount of body fat storage on the left versus right side of your body as an individual in certain areas, particularly your personal problem areas, is perfectly normal. That's not even unusual. I would say most people had that issue. They store body fat a little differently on one side versus the other. And I mean, I know that I do. And I think if you observe people, you'll find that most people do also. It's only that rare, at least if you're concerned about aesthetics or bodybuilding, if you are, then you would consider them that lucky individual who doesn't, that everything's just symmetric on them because they're just genetically blessed. And we all hate those people. But for everyone else, being a little bit asymmetric, even in your fat storage patterns genetically, is perfectly normal. All right, next question. Hey Jason, does hair baldness mean high levels of testosterone? And if that was true, can someone take advantage of it for more gains? Thanks. Well, yes and no. If you are genetically predisposed to male pattern baldness and you suffer from low testosterone levels, you probably won't go bald. It does mean that you have a nice, healthy, usually amount of testosterone, good testosterone production, because it means your body's producing more DHT. And to produce more DHT, you got to have enough testosterone to work with. So it is a sign of a combination of genetics with at least reasonably high levels of testosterone. And possibly guys who have above average testosterone will go bald a little sooner, even if it's naturally produced. So it can be that, but does it translate into gains? Not necessarily, as we've covered over and over and over. Various levels of testosterone when you are in the normal physiological ranges, and you're not outside of it because you've either suppressed your production in some way, which can happen through a host of reasons, or you've got more in your body because you're putting it exogenously into your body. Those are where you see the big changes and fluctuations up and down that are inside the normal ranges, even if they're fairly large fluctuations, don't have large impacts upon your gains. They can have very, very small impacts on your muscle gains, but it's not going to be 10 pounds of muscle difference. It's not going to be anything extreme like that. It might be that one person gains muscle a very, very small amount faster or slower based upon that, but it's not going to be so much so that you should really be worried about it, or that's going to give a dramatic, noticeable difference between two people. There are far many other genetic factors that produce way larger variations in person to person than your testosterone production. So it matters, just not as much as people seem to think it does. All right, next question. How often do you crave meat, and how often do you satisfy said cravings? This really varies. I go through phases with this. And again, as a lot of you know, with me being an ethical vegetarian, I grew up on a ranch, free-range ranch. I have hunted much of my life, all the way from my childhood up until my early 20s. So I have a long history with eating meat, particularly red meat. I love the taste of beef. I love it. And people say, oh, the taste will go away when you become a vegetarian. They're so full of shit. I love meat. I love raw red meat. I love rare red meat. I love the taste of it. I choose not to eat it. I go through phases to where I crave it. And the only thing that I find that really helps with the cravings are going to be things like really salty peanut butter or almond butter that I've microwaved or gotten hot. And it gives me that same taste, that salty taste and texture, kind of like a nice rare steak with a little bit of that bloody taste because of the salt in it. Or some meat substitutes can somewhat get by. It really depends. Some of the corn products can do okay for that. Some work better than others for it. So that's usually what I do when I get the cravings. And then I have periods of time to where I don't crave it. But I do have periods of time to where it's an everyday thing for 2 weeks straight. So it really varies a lot. The only plus I have to that is that I have had quite a bit of British beef over here since coming to the UK before I went vegetarian. And because I know their beef here, and no offense to you Brits, but I'm from Texas. I grew up on Texas Angus beef that we raised ourselves. Your meat here just cannot compare in terms of taste. It is not even comparable. So I know that even if I decided, oh, I'm not going to be a vegetarian, I can't find a good steak here at anywhere near a decent price, or possibly not at all, even if I was willing to spend a fortune on it. So that does help with the cravings a bit, that I know that there's no really good steak available, even if I wanted to do it and decided to do it. It's just not available. So that does help with the cravings a bit more. All right, next question. Best exercises for rugby, particularly forwards. And for those not familiar at all with rugby, forwards tend to be the biggest, strongest guys on the field. Those are guys usually chosen for that position. So accordingly, your training needs to go with that. Same sort of exercises that you would do for American football. They're going to put the most size, strength, and explosiveness on you. Barbell squats, barbell deadlifts, power cleans, push presses. And then any other good heavy body weight exercises you feel like doing, weighted dips, weighted chin-ups, all of those are good. But those big, heavy, explosive barbell movements, that's what's going to put the size and strength and explosiveness on you for that position. So if you're playing a forward in rugby, those 4 exercises need to be high on your priority list. You should probably get as strong on those 4 exercises as you personally possibly can. You cannot be too strong on those for being a rugby player in that position. Focus on them heavily. All right, next question. How important are protein sources? I.e., if I eat 4 servings of pasta, that isn't over 40 grams of protein, but will that protein have the same effect as something like meat or eggs or whey? I've heard people say, if it didn't come from an animal, it doesn't count. Okay, that's ridiculous. I went months and actually went into the British Nationals while still as a vegan before going back to normal vegetarian. And my protein was probably not ideal, and it was all plant sources, but I still took a medal. I still improved my total. And the reality is, the incomplete protein thing is a myth. Now, the reality is some protein sources are better than others in terms of their bioavailability, in terms of their complete amino acid score. But just because a lot of plant sources might be a little low, like not have 10 or 20% of the amount of one or two of the essential amino acids you want, but they're still there. So maybe in terms of their total completeness and how effective they are, there might be a plant source that per gram is only 70 or 80% as effective as something like whey protein or egg whites, but you'll find that beef is way down there at like 80% also compared to those. So it's not even the same for animal proteins, and so accordingly you might need just a little more to get all those same amino acids. You might need 40 grams of the pasta to get the full amino acid profile and all the amino acids from, say, the whey or the egg whites that you would have got from 30 grams of those. So you need a bit more, but the stuff is still in there. That's a misconception that it's not. But in terms of efficiency, yeah, some things like whey protein, egg whites, egg protein, those things are going to give you the most per gram. So not even meat. Meat is not even anywhere near the top of the list compared to those things. But even then, it's an issue of gram per gram quality, not total protein utilization. You can still reach those numbers off plant sources. You just have to have more, which can be a bit difficult to reach at times. I know I have firsthand experience with this, having done it for quite a while, but it can be done. It's just more difficult. But when calorie restriction comes in, it really becomes problematic. But no, it's not true that they're not complete proteins or not effective. That's complete nonsense. All right. Next question and last question of the week. Do you plan to have online coaching or some sort like other YouTubers? I had been considering going into online coaching eventually, but the reality is, due to the business nature of things, the taxation issues around it, with me being an American citizen currently living in the UK, me going into business that I do under my own name, that I own anything in, is really going to be a problem for me from taxation purposes. It's just too expensive while I'm here in the UK for me to go into business for myself, to where I'm not doing free work and someone else is making the money. Because of the taxation issue, it's just not viable. And I don't see me forever using purely the fitness industry or fitness or even coaching athletes as being my long-term business endeavor. I will probably, for the foreseeable future, will definitely be running a YouTube channel on fitness and do this, but that's not going to be my only focus in terms of like a business model in the future. It's just kind of a stepping stone, but it is something near and dear to my heart, and I don't see myself ever closing down my media outreach. I'll probably be making videos related to fitness in some platform or another for the public, probably until the day I die, or until the government takes the internet away from us. But as far as the coaching itself goes at this time, no, just looking at the whole nature of everything, I don't really see myself, envision myself going back into coaching again. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time. But let me give you guys a bicep shot before I go. Oh, Mount Biceps.